Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to actually the second conversation you've had with Mat Piscatella from Circana. Had a lot of fun last time. A lot of people were messaging me, like I said, saying you should have him back on. And we actually talked about this a bit after we got the 2025 kind of the full picture of what happened. Specifically, we were talking a lot about Call of Duty and Battlefield, how that would turn out. We got that picture. So I said, you know what? Let's get together. Let's talk about this. Matt, it's good to have you on.
Well, hello. It's great to be back chatting with you. Yeah, really interesting year, although it looks boring at the surface level. A lot of fun stuff in the detail I'm sure we can dig into, but fun to hang out again. And hi, everybody. Thanks for watching, I guess. Yeah, we'll hang out.
What's been the move anyway in terms of games before we get into numbers and stuff? What are you enjoying right now?
Oh, so Ubisoft, however you want to pronounce it, who the hell knows? The Far Cry Primal 60 FPS patch showed up, right? And I was like, I'll check that out. Like, I actually never played it. I bounced off it really quick back in the day. I'm like, let me just mess around, see what this patch is all about. All of a sudden, I have a big bear I'm running around with. Then I have a saber-toothed tiger, and I'm raiding villages with spears, and no one's saying anything other than, whatever caveman language we're talking. I'm like, you know what? This is all right. And so now I guess I'm platinuming Far Cry Primal in 2026. I don't know, man.
I did. It's funny you mentioned Far Cry with that patch. I went to Far Cry 3. So they did the 60 FPS patch. I went to that, and I'm playing through that on the PS5. And it was just such a different time for Ubisoft compared to now. It felt a bit more of a streamlined open world game. So that's what I've been doing. Just going around and doing some of the camps. And I do like the character, especially because Voss, who people, of course, have seen in things like Better Call Saul and stuff. The actor now, a bit more familiar, I'm sure, with people, but I'm getting a kick out of that. Also, there's some nostalgia mixed in. It was 360 days, late 360 days, and I think some awesome games are coming out pushing that hardware.
Yeah, it's like retro gaming now all of a sudden. I don't know, man. I'm finding the simplified map, the simplified objectives, the lack of currencies, the lack of all the other nonsense that's in games now. I'm like finding that very refreshing, and I can just focus on that instead of being sold 16 different battle passes or season nonsense. Like, I just want to play a game, and this is letting me play a game. So I'm kind of really digging it, surprisingly to me.
Yeah, I didn't get as into Far Cry Primal as I did with 3 and 4 and then 5. So that might be next. I don't know. It's tough because right now, beginning of the year, usually I'll do kind of a retro or backlog pick of a couple of games because I have a little bit of time before, like this week we have Dragon Quest 7 coming out. I wanted to check that out. Neo 3 is right around the corner, and then we get into a bunch of other releases with Mario Tennis and stuff. So
Yeah,
this was a good time for me to go back. So Far Cry 3, and then I fired up Legend of Dragoon, and I'm rolling through that, and it's been a good time. It's fun to kind of do that in the beginning of the year before the madness kicks in.
And it's so hard to go from big map game to big map game without just getting blown out and just getting completely burnt out. Like Far Cry 3 back in the day, I got the platinum on that one too, way back in the day. Love that one. But yeah, like I got map game fatigue. Who didn't? But for some reason, it kind of clicked with me this time. And you know, what the hell? What else am I going to do? So it's a good time.
Yeah, it's in comparison to what we see with some of the Assassin's Creed games now, the Primal and 3 are just like tiny subsections of those
It's too
maps.
big,
So.
man. There's just too much, too many hours, too big of maps. It's exhausting. I don't want to deal with it. And this is kind of like a refreshing, just run through this thing and ride a tiger. I don't know, man. Like, live your dream. I kind of dig it.
So let's start with some of the reporting you put out here. Now this was back January 22nd, where you had the December 2025 U.S. video game market highlights. There was a 1.4% growth, and this along with the big picture for 2025 was all reflected in this thread with the games. So we had the top 20 for both. And I don't think it was too surprising to see Call of Duty was number one for its release timing there. But the thing that I think surprised a lot of people was that when you do the entire year, like the totality of it, Call of Duty Black Ops 7 was number 5.
Yeah.
And I was really racking my brain. I'm like, man, when was the last time Call of Duty was multiple places down the list for its release year. Because typically, I feel like I go, you know what, it's the U.S. You might as well pencil Call of Duty in at the top. You know, the people make the jokes about the ball and gun shooters. It's like, hey, you know what, we like our shooters in the U.S. But number 5 was interesting. I mean, we technically had a shooter with Battlefield 6 that was number 1, but Borderlands 4 and Monster Hunter Wilds were also up there. Borderlands 4 shooter, but kind of a bit of a unique kind of shooter, we'll say. Monster Hunter Wilds, very different from what I would necessarily expect in the US to be in the top 5 at that time.
Well, Monster Hunter Wilds, of course, was released very early in the year, so it had a lot more runway to get there. But it did the bulk of its sales early on in its life. Kind of tailed off a little bit towards the back end of the year, but yeah, it was established at that point. I mean, Call of Duty, I think it was 16 straight years that Call of Duty was the best-selling franchise in the U.S. across all releases. Although for 3 years in that span, a different game ranked number 1, whether it was Grand Theft Auto 5 and 13, Red Dead Redemption 2, or Hogwarts Legacy. But this is the first time in a long time that Call of Duty hasn't been the best-selling franchise. This year it was Battlefield, and in fact, NBA 2K was number 2 on a franchise basis this year, with Call of Duty number 3. So it was a bit, it was a huge change, and impacted the year. You don't have the biggest game in the market take a little bit of a step back in terms of full game dollar sales. That having a cascading impact across the rest of the market. The interesting thing about Call of Duty now, of course, is that the offering isn't just the latest game. It's the last game. It's Warzone. It's all of these other ways they try to get people into the ecosystem, including subscription. So it gets a little muddled. It's hard to do apples to apples compared to past years, given the changing offering. But yeah, pretty big change. I mean, in the beginning of the year, I was expecting Call of Duty to stay number 1 because it's been number 1 forever. But that's what makes the market interesting. Things change, and to Battlefield's credit, to that team's credit, they knocked it completely, not out of the park, but out of the earth. They did an amazing job with that game, bringing that to market. So congrats to them.
Yeah, especially coming off of Battlefield 2042. I mean, that's a pretty big turnaround to go from what was, I mean, I'd say even a disastrous launch when that game came out. It was missing a lot of basic features, to now with Battlefield 6 coming out and effectively outselling, Call of Duty. That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
They were chasing that dragon for years, and they finally climbed the mountain on that. So good for them. I mean, if you go for the king, you best not miss, and they did it. So that's great.
I also noticed we had Ghosty Yote was number 11 on the overall list here. But I did notice that on the PlayStation 5 side, so if you just take PS5 numbers in particular, it actually did pretty well in comparison to some of the other big titles for the year, which does show, obviously, the multi-platform release certainly helps these different games in the wide-ranging market. But Ghost of Yote, when it was on the PS5 side, where did it place there compared to number 11 on the multi-platform side?
Oh, so it was 3rd overall for the year on PlayStation platforms. It was only behind NBA 2K26 and Battlefield 6. So overall, really strong performance there. We'll have to see how it does over time, if it'll have the legs of a Tsushima. Of course, expecting a PC port at some time, but I don't know what else you could have asked for in terms of commercial performance from this game this year. Great for them. You'll have to see where it ends up ranking in terms of the lifetime sales of Sony developed or PlayStation, published titles, but off to a pretty nice start for the year for sure.
Yeah, we'll have Sony. I think Sony's financial numbers are next week. Nintendo's are actually, they might be tonight as we're recording this. So great foresight by me picking today to record, but it'll, we'll see when all those numbers come out. And Sony last time they did share Ghosts of Yote numbers actually ahead of when they had to. So we might actually get an updated just outright number next time when they talk about it next week. As for the hardware, though, the Switch 2 was a pretty big talking point online, because it did end up being the top selling system here for the month, along with it being the fastest selling console released so far in like Circana tracking history. You even threw out the the hard numbers there for it.
Yeah, a little bit. Sometimes we do that when we can. In the fastest selling, there's a little bit of an asterisk on that just because of the release timing of it versus like a PlayStation 4. And, GBA as a handheld device, we classify that differently, although a lot of people online tell me we shouldn't. I get it. It's a piece of hardware, I know. But these are, you can argue all you want, but these are different use cases, I would say. And so we track them separately. In any case, yeah, Switch 2 being the fastest selling, of course, you only can be the fastest selling if you have the units to sell. And they did. They were very aggressive in their production, very aggressive in their upfront production, having available units in the launch window. And so what we ended up seeing is basically what we call a pull forward effect, where the units were available earlier, so the people that wanted them got them. And so we didn't see in the holiday window the lift from previous sales like you would in some other generations. Because other generations would come in very supply constrained into its first holiday. They would save units to ship to retail for Black Friday or December. And so you'd see like a really big sales lift in November and December as units were rolled out. With Switch 2, we never had those out of stock. So what you saw is a much more real demand curve or sales curve based on demand more than supply. So those differences can get a little bit lost when you're just trying to compare console X with console Y. Things like distribution and available units, those are very important. Things like price, promoted price, very important, as you know, to determining what will actually end up selling. But all in, hell of a successful first year. Now the question is, how do you sustain that momentum and build on that going into years 2 and 3?
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion around the idea that the Switch 2 had just a softer holiday season.
Don't I know it?
Yeah, you were kind of caught up in that a little bit. Just you were in the proximity with the.
I was just standing there, man, minding my own business. I'm looking around, and all of a sudden, people were talking like, "What do you?" I didn't say nothing. Leave me out of this, but whatever. I don't know. I wasn't surprised. In terms of our forecast, I forecast 4.3 million to start the year. We ended up at 4.4. We may end up revising that to 4.5 or 4.5, given some late retailer feedback, but we'll see. In any case, we came in super close to forecast. Did the sales flow like I thought they would? No, they were a little bit more front loaded because the units were available. We've never had a console have this much inventory available at launch ever. This hasn't happened. So, of course, sales were higher because there were more units to sell. Then that's not taking anything away from it. In fact, it's really, being a little bit in awe of the audacity to make so many units available day one. That shows a lot of confidence. And you know what? It worked out, and that's fantastic. But that's just, how the mechanics of the sales work.
Yeah, I feel like whenever a system comes out in my lifetime to where I was able to pay attention, maybe go out and get one day one for these systems. You're younger, you just kind of observe. When you get a little older, you can maybe participate in the market a bit. And I feel like it's always kind of been that situation of if I can get it, I'll wait in line. I'll do all these different things to jump through all these hoops. The Switch 2 was pretty painless to get one. So I don't know. It seemed nice. I hope every launch is like that. I hope it's just crazy amounts of systems constantly get thrown out there.
Wouldn't that be great? I mean, especially given everything else going on right now. But it was just funny in a this is ridiculous way, seeing some of the initial videos and stuff where people are like, oh, you can just go get one. This is not selling. I'm like, no, you idiots. It's selling great. They just have enough to sell. Come on, man. But it was kind of wild seeing that nonsense take place in the online discourse. Any discourse is nonsense usually, but this one was particularly nonsensical.
Well, there's the interesting thing about ship versus sold and stuff, but in my experience, when I would order for a chain of 5 or 6 different stores, I mean, this is a long time ago with funny enough, the Wii and the Wii U, but my experience was that Nintendo never took them back. So if you ordered them, you got them. That's it.
I mean, okay, well, if you want to, get really in the weeds with it, when a publisher sends a new video game to a retailer, there are no returns. There's, as you can, as a publisher, refund some dollars from that purchase price so the retailer can then drop the price in store. But yeah, it's a no returns business. And channel fill, or basically the units required to fill the US channel with product, is usually 50 to 60K, 1,000 units. And when we're talking millions of units, 50 or 60K, it's rounding error. But yeah, people get real lost in their feelings on shipped versus sold, and that's kind of silly too, but that's a whole nother story.
Well, it seems bottom line the Switch 2 had a successful first year, which was really 6 months, technically 6-7 months. Yeah. So the question will be the second and third year, as you mentioned, trying to keep that momentum up and what they'll have available to help push in marketing. Which right now I mentioned we have Mario Tennis coming up, but it seems like they are leaning heavily into third party, with even Resident Evil and Pragmata being their day one from Capcom. So maybe that's going to be more of their strategy, but I'm very interested to see how Nintendo keeps up this momentum, because I don't know if they'll reach the Switch 1 numbers. I would anticipate not, because that is such a high watermark.
Yep.
But if they end up at 100 some odd million, we'll say, but at a much higher price point like they have now, that I feel like would be considered a pretty reasonable success for them. So
100%. I mean, they've successfully addressed and met the core enthusiast audience, particularly the Nintendo fan. They've got them taken care of, but now you got to get to the mass market. You got to get to the mass market in a market that's very different than when the Nintendo Switch launched in terms of macroeconomic conditions, everything up and down the board. And you don't have the ability, perhaps, I mean, potentially, theoretically, you don't have the ability to play around with price as much because of what's going on with component parts and some of the uncertainties there. So we're like, I'm sure we'll talk PlayStation 5 in a bit, but, PlayStation 5 was aggressively discounting, in compared to the rest of the market during the holiday window. I was surprised by that, but it showed, it showed a very aggressive stance. And, because we're not seeing consoles get cheaper over time, in fact, we're seeing the prices go up for some systems over time. Like, the dynamics of how the console market works is changing in real time in front of us, and we don't have benchmarks in history to look to for guidance.
Yeah, that's the biggest. That's the problem. We're kind of in unprecedented, uncharted waters, even for consoles going up in price, appreciating in value. Hey, if you bought any of these systems day one, you invested wisely. All your stuff's worth more now. So.
And how do you continue to get more of the mass market involved in the console ecosystem when a lot of them are playing Minecraft, Fortnite, Roblox, GTA, Call of Duty on the systems they already have? How do you get those people incentivized to buy this next thing? And usually that's with big new games. And like you mentioned, there's a few of them coming from Nintendo. There's not as many coming out for the other systems. Particularly Xbox, specifically for that ecosystem. So it's very interesting times we're living in terms of the console market.
Yeah, so you mentioned Xbox, and they have games coming up but are also coming out for other platforms now, as we're learning, where Master Chief is going over to PlayStation. Fable announced PlayStation. Forza. So you're right in that Microsoft is spreading out quite a bit in terms of their releases and not looking to just funnel people into their specific console or necessarily their ecosystem. But they made headlines at the end of last year when a different system outsold them, and this was it was an entire write-up for many different places, because this little cube that apparently had been around since 2023 or something. I had no history at all about this thing. I've never really seen it until then, and somehow it breaks onto the scene. It's like the next system. I have to look up what it was again. What it was called?
The NEX Playground. Yeah.
Thank you. NEX Playground. That's how in tune I am with this thing. The NEX Playground, the next playground. And I look into it, and it's a little cube that you get. It's kind of a connector eye toy, really. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it's subscription based, to where you subscribe to it and you get a bunch of what are more mainstream or look kind of like cell phone crossover style games that the family can sit down and play.
Yeah, totally subscription based. Actually, I was doing some so I do, weekly reporting and all this stuff for all the clients, and like, hey, here's what's going on. So I'm digging through the data, and I see this like all other segment in console this one week really show this big change week on week, and I'm like, oh man, the data's busted, something broke. So I start digging in, trying to figure out what broke. And I'm like, why is this? Oh, plug and play. All right, what's going on? Then this one line item showed up for NEX Playground, had this massive increase. And I'm like, what the hell is this thing? I have never heard of it. And I'm in this stuff all the time and dig it in. And of course, find out, yeah, it's been around for a while. Got picked up on TikTok, from my understanding. Got picked up by some retail channels. They started throwing this thing up on end caps and really pushing for it at retail, particularly Target. And it started getting some real serious momentum, so much so that they sold out. They were shipping things air from the manufacturing places, which, as you know, is really expensive to do, trying to bring in as many units as they could. But it stayed sold out through the December window. eBay prices went through the roof for a little bit. And we'll have to see what happens when it comes back in stock. But I think what it really shows is that there is an audience and an appetite for family-friendly gaming content. And you know what? The console industry, with the exception of Nintendo, has basically walked away from that market for some time. And it really shows that the appetite is still there.
It's also it's priced a bit better. I mean, it's $250. And I guess the idea of you buy that, you can subscribe for some flat rate, and then you have a bunch of games is probably interesting to a family that's like, I got to buy this, I mean, $650 Xbox or $550 PlayStation or $450 to $500 Switch 2, and then you get the games on top of it. You get the online subscription on top of that. Controllers, whereas this NEX Playground, it can track 2 people at once apparently, and it very much sounds like the Kinect. So I wonder if Microsoft saw that and said, "Oh, you got to be kidding me, really?" But that's something I've thought about. The idea that one of these 3 now console manufacturers would think about doing some sort of offshoot system like that's not necessarily connected directly, like Nintendo. They typically would have a cheaper device on the market, like a Switch Lite. They still have it. But for how much longer? Would they think about, well, we're going to end up with a $450, maybe if prices go up a $500 just baseline price for our system, is there room for some $250 family-oriented device like the NEX Playground?
I think there absolutely is, and I think what we saw on the holiday shows that. I mean, and even if you look at the user experience on console now, like for people that are enthusiasts, right, that are watching this, like, you know, this, what are you talking about? It's not hard to get into a console ecosystem. If you're picking up a PlayStation for the very first time, trying to navigate the setup, the account creation, the subscriptions, it is a lot to take in for a potential new user, casual user, someone who just wants to play a game. It's not as easy as it used to be when you could just go buy an N64 and you plug the cart in, right? And that's a really big barrier for a lot of people. And I think the NEX Playground shows again, like, hey, I can buy something, put it under the tree, we can hook it up, and then just start having fun. Great. Like, I think there's a lot of opportunity there that we've kind of walked away from as an industry for a bit.
Yeah, here's a fun test for any of the viewers right now. You can say it down in the comments. How many times, we'll even say in the last year or two, has a relative or a friend or whoever been had to call or message you about setting up a system or something, you know, where they're having a hard time because they just got this for Christmas, or they're thinking about getting something for Christmas, but they're not sure what works with what. It happens to me all the time. Like, these systems have gotten more complicated than ever now. So I picture that NEX Playground, that simplified setup, but with Nintendo characters and Mario and stuff running around it. And I just think, man, that's a several million unit seller probably throughout a year.
It could be if they could work out the numbers on it and have it not directly compete with this. I mean, it gets so complicated, right? But yeah, I mean, as an industry, the console market is leaning more affluent. It's leaning older over time. I've posted some numbers people get mad about on social about that. But it's a fact. The console audience is aging and getting more affluent because it's pricing out younger and less affluent people because of that upfront purchase price. It's a big number to try to meet when people's housing, insurance, food costs are all continuing to rise really quickly. So having another alternative for people other than free-to-play stuff on mobile would be great for keeping people in a console ecosystem and then helping them maybe, you know, graduate to a more complex or more expensive device over time. It's just, I don't know, kind of simple math that we're not doing. So
Yeah, I kind of miss that cheap handheld that Nintendo would randomly put out, or even I mean even Sony when they had their PSP rolling alongside their super premium PlayStation 3, and that PSP started getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and it was like, oh okay, this isn't too bad to pick one of those up and just kind of have on a whim. But
Yeah,
it's the impulse buy is kind of gone almost. It feels like for
gone.
some of these consoles.
Absolutely gone. I mean, your impulse buy now is a $20 or $50 gift card for Fortnite. Your impulse buy isn't like, oh, Vita's $200. Oh, I'll give it a whirl. Like, no, it's like now you have to plan the purchase, or most people have to plan the purchase. They have to like save up, or how am I gonna put this on a credit card, like for a $600 or $700 box? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I saw the stat. I think you're mentioning the 53% of U.S. video game hardware buyers in Q4 25 had a household income of $100,000 or more, and that's a record high, up from 40% in Q1 22.
Yeah, and some people are saying like, oh, sure, but there's more 100K households now. Like, well, there are a few more 100K households, but not to account for that big of a gap in just a 4 calendar year window. And then people say like, oh, well, 100K isn't a lot. 100K is a lot for a huge chunk of the population in terms of household income. It is not normal for a household income to be 100K. Like, so, we're making it harder and harder for people to play in these ecosystems and to buy these devices. Now, like if you look at what Microsoft's doing, they're trying to attack that by saying you could play anything anywhere. Like you can do it on a cloud stream, you can do it on a different device that you have, you can do it on a PC. PlayStation's doing some of that with the Portal, trying to help people do, and their cloud service. Nintendo's still keeping people on the Switch too. But, we have to do something to address this problem of the console ecosystems in particular becoming so expensive and pricing people out, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, because my concern would be that the audience, the user base for the consoles starts shrinking more and more as we go. Like in terms of just
Yeah.
raw numbers of people, how many people have a console now versus how many people are just streaming through their web browser or using Amazon Fire Stick or even just playing on mobile phones, leaving the console space, not because they necessarily want to, but just because they're sort of forced out, or they're playing a PS4 in 2030 or
Yeah.
something because that's what they have.
Or playing Fortnite on their banger laptop because it's good enough.
Yeah, yeah.
And they don't have the money to spend and they don't want to worry about it. I can just fire this up and it works okay. And that's good enough. And I think that's what we're up against right now in terms of where this market's going to end up going.
Yeah, because then my concern would be, because people might be wondering, why does that really matter? Well, we get to a position where we see how many games are constantly coming out and how the budgets are going up, and you just run out of people to sell to where half the projects that we see now, 6-7 years from now, might get might just get like cut down in pitching because they're like, we can't give you the money for this because there's not enough people to sell it to. So
Exactly. That's exactly the problem. And then you add on the RAM and storage issue on the PC side. Like, who's greenlighting a really cutting edge or bleeding edge technologically devised game right now that's going to come out in 4 to 5 or 7 years? Like, no one's doing that. And with all of the layoffs we've had and the restructuring we've had at the big publishers, like, I'm expecting the number of AAA or 4A or however A's people want to assign to these games. I expect that number to continue to dwindle over time because not only because the audience is getting a little bit smaller, but we don't have the development teams in place anymore because of the restructurings and the layoffs and where the market's going with younger consumers more often choosing mobile and PC platforms to game. Like, there's a really significant shift happening in terms of where people playing and why they're playing. That's kind of in motion and right now.
wanted to talk to you a bit about PlayStation. We've kind of mentioned Xbox, Nintendo. PlayStation is interesting because we'll get their numbers, as I mentioned, next week, and I'm thinking they're gonna be right around that 90 million mark here pretty quickly for their console. But they're in this really weird spot right now because typically next year is when we would see their next system if you just kind of launch align things and just go about how we have traditionally with these console generations. But it feels soon. It does. It's everyone's kind of mentioning this. They're like, man, do we need that PlayStation 6 next year, because it would come out at the end of next year, but we would start hearing about it probably around GDC time, typically, where they'll do the little logo reveal. Here's the PS5. It's like, oh, cool. All right, good. That's what a 5 looks like in PlayStation font. And so we would hear about it then, and then we'd roll through all the next year with marketing and games and state of plays and stuff. But it doesn't seem as necessary now, maybe as it has in the past. And now we're here. You mentioned the PlayStation Portals attach rate is what was it, 7%, I believe.
Really good. Way beyond my expectations for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I almost wonder if Sony even a little behind the scenes start to, because that had to surprise Sony too, I feel like, because we're hearing about the potential for an OLED portal. And I mean, I assume that's a way for them to just raise the price of it a bit.
And mix the offering up right and get people re-energized to it, sure.
But it also starts to make people think more and more about PlayStation and even handheld form again. So there's a handheld that's being rumored for them now, a native one alongside this OLED portal. There's a PlayStation 6 that's out there somewhere, and it seems like Sony, as you mentioned, they were second behind the Switch 2, but that's kind of expected. The Switch 2, this new system that just came out, but the PlayStation 5 still feels like it has a fair amount of momentum going into 26.
Yeah, I mean, we have PS6 in the 27 forecast, but I don't feel great about it. I think it could be beyond that. They are in a very interesting spot, right? Like their primary competitor, they've been fighting since 2001, has decided to really change gears and isn't really fighting the console hardware fight anymore. They are the premier. I don't want premium, but not in the sense that Nintendo games aren't premium games. Of course they are. They're some of the most amazing games ever, but premium in terms of the market positioning, in terms of price point and the glitz around the games that are coming out for it. So they have that market more for themselves now than they've ever had before. And so what do you do with it, right? How do you optimize that? And like you said, I have no idea if the rumored PlayStation handheld thing is true or not, but it would make perfect sense to say, hey, let's build another couple years on PS5 by introducing this handheld and bringing this whole new world of gaming possibilities to people and extend this life cycle a little bit until we figure what the hell's going on with components and the macroeconomy and tariffs and everything else, so we can figure out exactly, how to best launch the PS6. So I mean, I'm sure there's all kinds of ideas being floated around and thought about in different scenarios that might play out. It's kind of fun to think about where they could go. But like you said, for a lot of players, they feel like they haven't gotten their big PS5 games they were expecting. Where's Naughty Dog still this late in the cycle? GTA is still not here. So, maybe there are some more years, but the problem on that is, if you go back to our previous conversation, is that all of a sudden you don't have a new hardware device to really boost that hardware market. And as Switch 2 peaks and starts its decline, if we don't have a new PS6 in the market, then all of a sudden the console hardware market starts looking pretty darn dire, just in terms of the dollar sales, and then all things start changing in terms of the planning around that. So super interesting, and we're in a time now where the future is being determined. We just don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, you mentioned GTA 6, and that's going to be massive. We figure at the end of this year when it comes out, hoping end of this year when it comes out, just because of some of the delays that have hit it already. But that has the opportunity to really, I think, kind of change the typical curve for a console's lifespan, like the PS5, which popular now, but when GTA comes out, let's face it, with the number of PlayStation 5s to Xboxes, very well could at that time be 4-1, just globally. In the US, it might be a little different. Maybe it's 1-3 or 1-2 or so. I'm not sure in the US. But yeah. Well, but GTA could all of a sudden, these systems that are flatlining, just on their decline, could all of a sudden tick up a bit because people go, oh well, I guess I do need to get that PS5 now because GTA 6 is this world beater of a sales game.
Yeah, if you look at when GTA 5 launched in 2013, kind of similar-ish timing, maybe a little bit later in the cycle for that cycle for GTA 5, but of course they ported that all kinds of ways.
Oh yeah.
And it continues to be one of the top 20 sellers every single month. Forever until we all die and then beyond. Perhaps when the Earth is swallowed by the sun in 4.2 billion years, GTA will get off of the bestsellers chart, but probably not before then. Yeah, I mean, that's the hope, right? The hope is that not only will GTA 6 get players back in and interested in GTA 6 and the consoles, but also in accessories and subscriptions and, hey, discovering some other games and really, kind of boosting the entire ecosystem, which is what the expectation is for a game that is it should be considered to be the biggest entertainment launch in world history by the time it comes out. We'll have to see, but yeah, the expectations for it, I don't know if it could be any higher.
Yeah, I assume that's gonna be something special when that comes out in terms of sales for not only it but everything around it. Whatever it's on, I like Xbox will probably be like, whoa, we're actually selling $650 Xbox Series all of a sudden.
Just let it come out. Just let it come out. We've been waiting this thing has been in the forecast and out of the forecast for a long time. I want this out. So we'll see what happens.
You know what I would be interested to see is when the next trailer for GTA 6 comes out and they show gameplay, maybe they do a little deep dive on it. And it ends up being super impressive and it blows up online, hundreds of millions of views. I'd be curious to see if there's just an uptick in PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series sales just from that gameplay deep dive trailer.
Oh yeah, I'll be watching that extremely closely too, as you may imagine. The sales curves, particularly for PlayStation and Xbox now, are pretty, they're locked in. We're a later cycle on these things. They're pretty predictable in terms of the sales performance. So anything that causes a blip is pretty easily noticeable. And so, yeah, I'll be watching that like a hawk. Just see what's going on with those.
So GTA 6 is the big, obviously the big data point for 2026. But now that we're into the year, we're a month in, and we're starting to head towards some releases. Is there anything else just in the forecast that stands out to you?
I mean, sure, year two of Switch 2. Right now, a very conservative 5.1 million forecast for this year for the US. Again, pretty conservative. The thing that makes forecasting more difficult now than perhaps ever before is a couple things. One is no one announces anything anymore, except for the biggest of the biggest, because you don't need the retail run up anymore. You don't need to push pre-orders at GameStop anymore. So much of it's digital, and so the whole plan of attack in terms of how you market a game is very different than, say, what it was 10 years ago. But also because the audience, particularly on the consoles and PC, have become much more receptive to surprise games, like smaller games or games that come out of relative obscurity that end up being big drivers for the year. And these kind of viral hits, whether it's Repo or Claire Obscure or whatever, these games that are coming out of, more obscure places are finding bigger commercial success than they would have in the past. And those are very difficult to predict what those will be. Like, you think back to last year with Pal World and Helldivers 2 showing up. No one was expecting Pal World or Helldivers 2 to blow up a sales chart, but they did, right? And so that's what's interesting now is, like, the biggest games, the games everyone are going to be talking about at the end of this year, we probably don't know the names of half of them right now.
Yeah, and even ones we do know the name of, there's still even sometimes some skepticism. Like Crimson Desert, is people are at the magnifying glass on that one, but if it ends up actually delivering, that could end up being like a big time game that comes out and sells really well and pushes the market. So you never really know anymore. And to your point, Nintendo could have, say, a 3D Mario game this year, and we'd find out in the summertime. Yes. Oh, that's coming out this hot. That's out in 4 months, huh? Okay.
Yep. Oh, okay. Let me go back to 5 points. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's much more reactive these days when you're trying to do your forecasting and planning, because the known knowns. We don't have as many of those. We have a lot of known unknowns these days, where we know things are going to show up, have no idea what those things are going to be.
Yeah, or like Pokemon. talk about there being a new Gen 10 Pokemon for this holiday, and they'll announce it at the end of February or something. It's like, well, great, okay, now we're
And
got to
that
move that
changes
around.
everything again, right?
Yeah,
So
or like where's Wolverine in comparison to GTA? Is it in the same month? Is it a month before? Or like even just the placement of some of these games around GTA 6 is tough to kind of figure out now.
yeah, man, like I was so before my video game days back like 20 years ago when I first got into corporate, I was doing forecasting of dog food for pedigree, kind of forecasting 8-ounce wet chunk lamb cans and see how those sales, like you could pinpoint forecasts of those sales to like a quarter percentage point. If I get within plus or minus 5% right now in the video game world, I'm like, hell yeah, like I got lucky. Because usually like your forecast range of error is so much higher because of what we don't know and what surprises, but that's kind of what makes this business so fun.
Yeah, so with we talked about Sony and Nintendo. Microsoft, I did want to come back to though, because it's interesting. I'm not really sure what their next generation is going to entail when it comes to hardware, and that would obviously be very relevant to the market here. But the going discussion, the rumor right now is that their next system could be quite expensive. But we've seen that already with the ROG Xbox Ally X, where that's
Mm-hmm.
$1,000 or more, depending on the area with tax and stuff. Sure, but that's not a cheap handheld. It comes out, it's a premium product, and I'm wondering if their console will be very similar in that we have hardware you can buy it. It's a PC that looks kind of like console, and if you want to play elsewhere, you can because you can stream it everywhere. So I do wonder what the placement of $1,000 system would even look like in today's market.
Yeah, and this kind of goes for Steam Machine too, although the question is much more open on what the price is going to be because they could bring that price down and just eat some of those costs if they wanted to, although that's not something they tend to have liked to do in the past, although making their prices very competitive but not, selling the farm. Yeah. So I'd be more optimistic of a Steam Machine over a Steam Machine style Xbox device in the current market. The ROG Alloy Xbox thing, it did
The name needs some work.
okay. Yeah, it did okay the first couple weeks, but then it fell off because of course it did at that price point. Like your available market for that isn't huge. And so we'll have to see what happens. But, and even if they even decide to bring out a next generation Xbox, given everything going on with components and storage and not just lean more onto the OEM third party agreements, right? Like that's also on the table. Rob Fahey and GamesIndustry.biz did a really interesting opinion piece on Xbox's change of strategic direction and what that might all mean. But I think one of the key points he was making is that, there is still a ton of uncertainty here. And what they decide to do could change rapidly and quickly as they try to roll out this new approach. Although it's not a new approach, it's the tactics are new and exactly how they're going about it is new. The strategy changed some years ago, but they were still putting out the Xbox Series X and S. They were still trying to sell consoles, build on the attach rate and the tie ratios. But now, like, it's a whole different world, and even in their corporate reporting, that's changing pretty dramatically in terms of what numbers they're talking about and what numbers they're not talking about. So yeah, it'd be very interesting to see. I'm not anticipating if there is a new device from Xbox, I'm not anticipating it competing with the PlayStation 5, as crazy as that sounds to say. I think it's going to be more of a high-end PC competitor, but I could be completely wrong. I think it's just going to be a different, not necessarily new, but a different market niche.
I'll admit you brought up the Steam Machine, and I'm glad you did because that's incredibly compelling to a lot of people right now. And right now we're just kind of hanging out, waiting to hear more from Valve after they unveiled it at the end of last year. But I've actually built a couple of Steam OS systems now, cheaper ones, just to get a feel for how it would be up on a big screen. So I've put together a couple of like $200 gaming PCs that'll play a lot of the older games. So like I went back to the 360 days and looked through all those games, and I realized, lower end PC now with a basic video card can actually play all those games at 1080 60. Okay, well, I'll do that, load SteamOS, and it's a it's a pretty good experience on the TV. So now I'm looking at the Steam machine, wondering, okay, is this going to be the big aha moment for people with PC? But it also kind of comes back to the pricing on this thing. Are you guys going to be tracking the Steam machine sales? Are you able to do that?
Indirectly, because they only sell direct,
Right.
we lean in our receipt panel. So basically, what we have is a huge panel of consumers, and they scan all of their receipts, either through their email or manually, and then we aggregate that and look at purchase patterns and then extrapolate from there. So indirectly, we'll be looking at it, but it won't be part of the point of sale reporting because it's direct to consumer.
Okay.
A
Okay.
little
Yeah. I
bit
was
in the
just
weeds there. When you're building these things, where do you think the price point's going to come in? Because we've seen price points from people, like estimates that go from $300 to $1,300. Where where do you see the sweet spot?
I've my price has slowly gone up as the news comes out about everything related to RAM and AI, and every time a couple of batch of articles comes out, I raise the price of my mind $50. So for the Steam machine, and I think it was when Valve discontinued their $400 Steam Deck that I went, ooh, okay. I kind of feel like they can't make that anymore because it's just too expensive to, and I think it's mostly just the RAM and then the storage because it had 256 gigabytes of onboard storage. That's going up in price, flash memory, everything DRAM related. And I look at the Steam machine, 16 gigabytes of DDR5. It's slotted in, so it's going to be two basically laptop looking RAM sticks. Okay. So that's going to cost some money. And you think about the storage inside 512 gigabytes, that's going to cost some money. And it's funny, the part that is probably the easiest for Valve to get is going to be the processor and the video card. Like it's usually the hard part to get. No, that'll be easier. Although it does have VRAM they have to worry about. So I'm right in the neighborhood, I think currently of 700 for the thing. But I don't know if they're going to have a package where it's 800 with the controller, and then you also get, which we see them announce it, their Half-Life game that's currently rumored, which might be Half-Life 3, but they might call it something else.
Interesting. Okay, that's a very reasonable price point. Okay, I'll make a note to put it in the assumptions. I like that.
Where are you falling on the price?
I don't know. I'm more on the high end just because I think, if I was in those shoes, I would want to err on the side of caution for my
Mhm.
financials and be in the 800 to 1,000 range. But I don't know. They've been very good at aggressively targeting like the PC portable market. Like their price points are really super competitive and appealing. And so, I'd imagine they're going to take that same kind of theory to the Steam machine, but there's so much uncertainty that I don't know. I think it adds a lot of risk. I'm not sure. So I'm asking everybody what they think, and maybe I'll just average them all out and go, yeah, that's it.
I'll be. I'm, I'm curious because I think they might sell it without the controller as a cost cutting measure because you can with a Steam OS you can sync up anything. So I'll use an Xbox controller or a DualSense controller or Nintendo's Pro controller, or whatever, and the system will on the fly change the button configurations and everything for you. So it already has that baked in. And the Steam controller they showed looks really good. Looks way better than that first gen one they had, which was not great. I didn't like it anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe they do have a way they can bundle stuff together and get the price up. But I feel like even they realize, is it worth making this thing if it's $1,000 starting? I feel like they would have just thrown the whiteboard out the door if that was going to be the case then.
All right. So, okay, let's say for they do the 700. Like you said, what's the eBay price on day one when, when it completely sells out and they start throwing them on eBay?
I mean, we saw the PS5 triple in price back in the day, so maybe I'd start there. People would probably try to get like $2,000 for the thing.
Right? I'm thinking that too. It'll be a fun one to watch because they're not going to be able to make enough to satiate demand from the Steam folks at launch. So really, really wild to see that secondary pricing.
Oh,
Now,
enthusiasts
what
would
if they
be
did a
all
thing
over
like
it.
Ouya did, right? Where Ouya, it's a Steam machine, but they engrave your Steam username in it, and it's tied to
Oh,
your account, so you can't sell it.
there you go. That's funny because you got to use your you're right. You got to use your Steam Steam handle basically got to sign into Steam to buy the thing. That's interesting. That'd be
They would
funny if they
never
do
do
that.
it, but boy, that'd be pretty funny, wouldn't it?
Just to yeah, because like you said, Scalper's gonna be all over this thing,
Yeah.
so that'll be a fun couple of weeks there on the market. But I mean, we're into February now. I'd like to think they're gonna get moving on this soon. But the RAM crunch, which I guess is the last thing we could talk about, the RAM crunch has been something special. Wow, it's I don't know. It seems like I mentioned it. I keep ticking up the price in my mind, $50. I started with the Steam machine when it was all even, and it seemed like we didn't have to worry too much about RAM getting crazy and VRAM being a problem. I was actually starting at like $500 for the thing when it was in a perfect world a year ago. Like, oh yeah, $500. They'll make this work. It's an 8 GB card. It doesn't seem too outlandish with the specs, and now it's a pair of DDR5 for 32 gigabytes is the same price as a PS5 right now. So I don't really know what you do about that, but it's so much uncertainty for the market because I think there's potential for consoles, as crazy as it sounds, to go up in price again this year.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I know some people were kicking around a $400 price when it was first announced. Like they'd be going directly head to head, and it's going to be great, which was always a little bit optimistic, I think, from some of the analysts out there talking about this stuff. But yeah, what do you do, right? So like, if I'm Valve, I ain't saying nothing until the very last possible second because of this change, the changes that are happening in this market so quickly. And now, like, and then you got to think about like, all right. NVIDIA's $100 billion OpenAI investment commitment all of a sudden isn't a commitment, and they're looking at things on a piece by piece basis. All right, does that mean things are changing in that? Like how long, if for example, investment in these data centers pulled back for whatever reason, how long would that take to be reflected in things like RAM? Like it just boggles the mind, man. Like I think it was Kyle Orland reached out to me like, I don't know, 2 months ago. He's like, hey, what's going on with the RAM? And I go, what the hell are you talking about, dude? I have no idea what you're talking about. And then I go look and I'm like, holy crap, what the hell's going on? And it's just gotten worse from there every day. I don't know, man. Like this is some wackadoo times.
Yeah, now I see a lot of the RAM manufacturers, SK Hynix, Samsung, and others are starting to go to end purchase. Like you say, they sell, and then those resellers sell, and now they're going, okay, who are you selling this to? Because they're trying to allocate where RAM goes, but they want to make sure they're not sending too much to one place where they're stockpiling, and that's just where we are with the industry right now in DRAM. And unfortunately for us, DRAM isn't everything. So I think the latest thing is that you're going to see TVs go up in price, which I will shout out to TVs. For everything else that's gone up in our life, TVs have actually been pretty good in terms of price while still getting better. Like I'd be mind blown if I could walk through a Walmart 20 years ago and get a 65-inch TV for $400.
Right.
So but everything, I mean, phones are an issue now, laptops, just about everything around us. And it's wild times to try to navigate this. I'm glad I'm not putting the orders in. I would mess it up. There's no way.
Yeah, it's like Tickle Me Elmo, but like really, really not great. Schwarzenegger should come back and do a Christmas movie, but instead of trying to find the hot toy, he's trying to find RAM.
Hey, there's a classic Christmas movie we can all watch 20 years from now. There you go.
How am I gonna find my RAM? Oh.
Is there any games coming up this year, Matt, that you're looking forward to?
I'm looking forward, like we were talking about. I'm looking forward to all the games that I had no idea existed until they show up and are one of the best-selling games of at whatever time. Like I'm just super hyped on, especially in the Steam marketplace right now, the games that are being discovered and brought to the front, and how willing people are to jump into something new and different and weird. Like I think that's super encouraging. Because if you look on the console side, it's Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox. Every single week, it's the same stuff. But I think the experimentation is alive and well. The independent and small team developers are doing some amazing things, and that gives me hope for the market when everything else looks not so great.
It is always fun when just a random game shows up and does really well, even if it's a game that doesn't really look like something I would enjoy as much because it's not my kind of game. Like Karen just came out. Yeah. And I see a lot of people talking about it, and I checked it out. I said, I don't think that's my kind of game, but I see the gameplay loop. I see why it would be interesting to people, and it's genuinely different. It's kind of playing off that the basic mechanic in most games where you're climbing, but then they take it to a new level and then build an entire game around it. And it seems like it's a quality game people enjoy. So I like games doing that, trying new
Yeah.
things and trying to expand.
I mean, we talk a lot, like people have been console gaming a long time in particular. We talk a lot about how, like, in a lot of ways, it was better when we were playing in like 2004 or whatever. Like, just gaming was better. And in a lot of ways, yeah, I guess you could say it was better in terms of the whole process of play and going down and renting a game, maybe, or like all the different ways you could do that. But in terms of the kinds of games getting made, the sheer number of games getting made, like we're kind of in a golden age of people being able to make whatever weird game they want to make and be able to bring it to an audience. And I think that's super cool. We'll see how long it lasts, but I think that's really great.
I think it was back then, it was more, we had so much more discovery than now, where we're starting to, we can see games by the numbers at this point, like the basic structure, as we mentioned, of open world. Back then, man, open world games showing up and doing stuff was just impressive to us. We're like, wow, it seemed like every year there was some crazy new discovery being made in games, maybe even every couple months. Now it's pretty by the books for the top, like the big AAA games, as you mentioned. But man, there's some creativity out there in the smaller indie space. So that's kind of where to look now to have those same kind of experiences and discoveries.
See, and maybe as consoles become $23,000 a piece and PCs are only owned by the billionaires, we'll all be playing smaller games on PlayStation 4s huddled in a corner in 2037, trying to find wood to burn to keep our caves. Anyways, we'll see how that goes, but it's pretty fun that these games are showing up.
It's funny you mentioned that. I joke about the idea of retro and nostalgia in the future, say 20 years from now or 15 years from now, being locally owned hardware that's not connected to the internet. It's like if your system runs without the need for cloud, then it's this retro thing now. So
like, whoa, what's that?
That could be it. That could be it. You don't have to stream your games now. You can play it directly. So.
Whoa, you don't have to connect to the net. What?
Yeah. That was good. But I appreciate you joining me today, Matt. That was very insightful. I found out some really cool,
fun to
good
chat.
data,
Yeah.
good data points. A lot of fun.
Thanks for giving me my price point assumption for Steam Machine. I'm gonna lock that into the forecast and see what it kicks out, and let's see what happens. Always great to chat.
Well, that's Mat Piscatella. Check him out. He's over on Blue Sky with Circana. He's always putting out information pretty consistently, actually, because he'll even go back and grab older games that randomly sell one copy for some reason in the last report. And it's funny, I picked up my Vita again. I've been playing that, and I was like, man, what's the last Vita game that's sold? What was the last copy that someone found at retail? So maybe I'll have to ask you that next time if you don't have it in front of you.
Oh man, I posted it in that thread. There was like 5 Vita games that sold 1 unit in 2025. But I don't have it right in front of me.
Well, people should go over and check you out then, so they can see the list of Vita games. See?
I can't believe how much that blew up, man. I spent all this time building out these projection models and all this stuff, and I'm like, hey, Imagine Babies sold 1 unit. Like, what? Oh my God, that's the cool. All right,
that's man. All it took.
Whatever makes people happy.
That's how it goes. Fortnite makes way more money than Claire Obscure, despite all the Game of the Year awards for Claire Obscure. That's all it is, right? See?
Yeah, that's a whole nother hour discussion there.
Well, Matt, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining me. Everyone, check him out again over on social media, Blue Sky, and we'll see you guys next time.